tonight's show. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. I'm just going to turn my ringer off so we're not disturbed by a bunch of nuisance ding dong dangs in the show. But thank you again for tuning in. Good evening and welcome to Primetime Live here on Jess TV. I am your host, James Cousineau. We have a full broadcast lined up tonight. Over the next little while, we are going to be talking about the vital news shaping our province, our country, and around our world. We'll cover major public safety operations in Lethbridge, critical national healthcare figures, and pressing international headlines. Of course, we will have an update on the Canadian wildfire situation. And then in our extended main block, we will take an in-depth investigative look at the tragedy that has broken the hearts across Alberta and across Canada. That is, of course, the disappearance and heartbreaking discovery of 11-year-old Parker in Calgary, Alberta. We will scrutinize the mechanics of Canada's Amber Alert system, examine why it took 2 days to issue a special emergency alert for a missing nonverbal child with autism, and lay out the concrete legislative changes that are required right now to prevent another family from enduring this agonizing wait. Later in the program, we will also have an emotional message video from Parker's mother, who went online to thank the community for their outpouring of support for all of those who took time to go out and search for Parker. And we'll look at that in further depth in today's deep dive. Tonight's broadcast, once again, ladies and gentlemen, is proudly brought to us by our exclusive and executive sponsor, Carry Movers Limited. Whether you're moving your family across town or relocating your business across the country, Carry Movers delivers reliability, care, and professional excellence. Visit them online at www.carrymovers.com. That's K-A-R-Y movers.com. We thank them for supporting independent investigative journalism. And let's go straight to tonight's top regional news stories. A lot to get through tonight, so thank you again for joining us. And before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget that you can join the live chat. Let us know where you're tuning in from. We love to know what areas our viewers are joining from. We have viewers all around the world, and we love to give shout outs as you join us. So by all means, hop into the chat section and send us a little message. Now we begin tonight with stories from southern Alberta with major developments out of Lethbridge. The Lethbridge Police Service, alongside the province's Safer Communities and Neighborhoods, also known as SCAN unit, conducted a targeted downtown enforcement operation focused on crime, open drug use, and of course public disorder. Now the numbers released by the police tell a stark story. 107 outstanding arrest warrants were executed, leading to 26 individual arrests and 15 formal criminal charges laid. During the deployment, officers cleared over 60 unauthorized encampments and dismantled hazardous debris throughout the Galt Gardens and the surrounding downtown core. Beyond the warrant enforcement, a special shout out to the officers involved as they intervened directly to save a life during this event. During the suspected drug trafficking interdiction in Gate Gardens, an individual collapsed in severe respiratory distress from an alleged or suspected opioid overdose. Officers immediately administered naloxone and provided emergency respiratory aid until the paramedics arrived. They successfully revived the 49-year-old man. The operation also resulted in significant seizures of street-level fentanyl packaged for distribution. Now, let's move on to Alberta Health and Energy Briefing. Yes, elsewhere in the province, discussions around Alberta's economic and healthcare infrastructure remain front and center. Premier Danielle Smith proposed energy corridors and healthcare reform trials, allowing direct patient access options. And that continues, of course, to draw intense debate in Edmonton. We'll keep tracking these legislative moves closely as the fall session approaches. And a quick update on the Whoop Up Drive bridge work. Crews continue the recoding project on the Whoop Up Drive bridge, which has now moved to a 24-hour work schedule to keep the project on track. Drivers in the area should expect lane closures and changes near Bottom Road, with further overnight work planned on the Scenic Drive North Overpass at 5th Avenue North. The ACERT team is investigating. That is, of course, the Alberta Serious Incident Response Team, and they are investigating the death of a 22-year-old man who fell from a high level bridge earlier this month after officers responded to a report of a man on the bridge deck. ACERT's review is ongoing. Theoretically, Brewing Company is closing. It is a well known local business closing its doors. The brewing company announced that it will shut down operations this Friday, July the 31st, citing a difficult ownership decision after several years of serving the community. Now, when we look at wildfire stories tonight, we will get into more depth of stories from across the nation. However, let's take a look right now at what's going on here in Lethbridge. And that is the fact that the Lethbridge Fire and Rescue, Emergency Services has received more than $42,000. That comes in the form of provincial funding through the Forest Resource Improvement Association of Alberta to strengthen local wildfire readiness. Timely, given, of course, the dry conditions that much of the province is dealing with this summer. The search crews are continuing their efforts in Waterton. Search crews are looking for an 81-year-old Golden, British Columbia man who hasn't been seen since Sunday, July the 19th. He had told family that he had planned to hike Section A of the Great Divide Trail through Waterton Lakes National Park towards Coleman. Yeah, 81 years old. He's going out on a hike by himself. I'm not sure I would suggest that, but all the power to him. I just hope that he makes it home safely and is there to challenge his family further as he goes out on his own little adventures. Now, Alberta healthcare changes are coming beginning this week. Albertans will be able to pay out of pocket to bypass a medical referral for diagnostic screenings like MRI or ultrasound, under legislation passed this spring by the Smith government. Critics call it a two-tier system. The province calls it a shorter way to reduce wait times. Personally, I don't believe that you should be able to take money out of your pocket to jump the queue, and it should be open to everyone to get service in a timely manner. Alberta's online gambling regulations are in the news as well. The province has moved to regulate online gambling more tightly. Story we've been tracking as the new provincial rules are rolling out. We will keep you updated on what those changes mean for Albertans. And good news out of Chinook. Some of the good news that we can finally bring you is that the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation $100,000 donation. Sorry, folks, I just gotta click that. My apologies. Now, a $100,000 donation from a local couple, Anne and Cliff Ellie, will support the Bringing Hearts Home Cardiac Care campaign, a campaign that remarkably has already surpassed $30 million, which was the goal 6 months ahead of schedule. So again, great news for the Chinook Regional Hospital Foundation and all of those who will be benefiting from that care. Now, as we move on to national Canadian stories, we have a lot to talk about. First, a sobering report published by the Canadian Medical Association and Journal highlights an escalating crisis in primary and emergency care. Survey data indicates that roughly 1 in 10 emergency room physicians in Canada are preparing to leave acute care practices due to chronic burnout, prolonged wait times, and extreme staffing shortages. Health advocacy groups are renewing calls for a unified federal provincial health workforce strategy to stabilize emergency departments before the winter strain hits. On the economic and defense front, federal ministers are holding consultation rounds on Canada's military expenditures and infrastructure obligations under updated NATO guidelines. Prime Minister Mark Carney's cabinet continues to navigate balancing federal budget targets with long-term capital investments in northern sovereignty and energy transit. We'll monitor these parliamentary discussions as cabinet reconvenes. I want to take a few minutes to walk you through some things where the wildfire season stands here across Canada, because one of the things that we've seen is that it's gone from a very slow start to a genuine national emergency in just a matter of weeks, and it, my friends, is not over. Let's start with the scope of it. As the most recent national figures, Canada has now burned past 3 million hectares this season, with active fire counts sitting close to 900 blazes burning simultaneously from coast to coast to coast. To put that in perspective, earlier in July, the season was actually tracking below the 5 year average. Then, in the span of about 10 days, it flipped. Fire totals jumped past the 25-year average, and we've now got more fires burning nationally than the historical norm for this point in the calendar year. That's the headline. And a season that looked manageable in early July became a full blown crisis by mid month, and it has not let up. Two regions are carrying the brunt of it right now, and that, of course, is British Columbia, in the country's being the country's hot spot at the moment. Up in the Caribou region, fires north of Clinton have merged into massive complexes. That's forced evacuation orders for communities including 70 Mile House, with dozens of other towns under evacuation orders or evacuation alerts. The Pear Lake wildfire near Clinton has been especially aggressive, filling the highway corridor along Route 97 with thick orange smoke and forcing that village to clear out entirely. Then we turn our sights to Ontario, and that is the other major front. Crews are battling the Thunder Bay 36 fire, a record breaking blaze in the province's northwest, along with more than 130 fires concentrated in that very same region, over 60 of them still burning out of control. Beyond those two, we've got ongoing evacuation order and alerts in the Northwest Territories. Wrigley remains under a full evacuation order that's been in place since late June, and new ignitions have popped up as far east as Nova Scotia. Now, here's a part of our problem that we're seeing to our neighbors in the south who have been feeling directly the impacts. The smoke plumes out of Western Ontario have been riding the jet stream down into the American Midwest and Northeast. It, of course, it's been bad enough to give cities like Chicago, Milwaukee, Boston, even New York some of the worst air quality readings anywhere in the world on certain days this month. At its peak, more than 100 million people across the United States were under air quality alerts at once. The forecast says that it's not going away just because we flipped the calendar to August. Meteorologists expect that the smoke will keep drifting south periodically throughout the early August weeks. And there is, though, a little bit of good news as the jet stream shifts later in the month. It may push more of that smoke over less populated parts of Canada instead of being pushed directly over major U.S. population centers. That, of course, leads us to wonder, what does the outlook look like from here? The federal government's latest fire danger modeling has British Columbia facing the highest and most sustained risk through the rest of the summer, particularly in the southern interior, which is expected to see higher than normal fire danger continuing into August. That lines up with exactly what we're watching unfold in the Caribou right now. Nationally, Environment and Climate Change Canada is calling for above average temperatures straight through August, with below normal precipitation expected in northwestern Ontario and continuing dryness across much of the West. There is some recent rain relief, but not enough that's going to make a big difference. In Ontario specifically, a system moved through the Minnesota Ontario fire zone recently and dropped a couple of inches, which did help the crews on that front. Though officials note, as I said, it may have also sparked a few new starts from lightning. The bottom line for the weeks ahead, ladies and gentlemen, is that no major systemic relief is in sight. Fire danger stays elevated across the West, especially in BC's interior through August. The East should see intermittent relief from pressing weather systems, but the overall pattern favors continued fire activity late into the summer. Once again, if you're going out into the wilderness, please use extreme caution, follow any and all fire restrictions, and of course, if you see a wildfire, report it. Do not rely on others to do that or assume that somebody else has. On the response side, Ottawa has been ramping up support. There's a $1.25 million investment across 6 projects aimed at strengthening Indigenous led wildfire preparedness, training for up to 38 Indigenous wildland firefighters, plus risk mapping and excavation coordination work with the Métis Nation communities in British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Ontario. The federal government has also funded 10 new firefighting aircraft and 2 additional support assets to help provinces facing the highest need fronts. Groups like Team Rubicon continue to support disaster response on the ground, and provinces can request federal assistance directly when a fire situation exceeds their own capacity. This, of course, is given what we've seen in BC and Ontario right now, very much the reality several regions are, in fact, living in. If you would like to help others in need, don't forget that you can do so by going to www.propixcanada, that's PROPICS Canada.com, and just click on the PPCM Fund for Good, where you can donate securely online and all funds go to people in need. Now, so that's where things stand. A season that started slow and turned into one of the more serious fire years we've tracked, with British Columbia bearing the heaviest load right now, and no clear breaks in the weather pattern before us. We'll keep following this closely and bring you updates as the situation develops. Now, let's turn to the global news of importance before we get into our deep dive tonight. Of course, there is across southern Europe intense seasonal heat waves, which have also sparked ferocious wildfires across regions in Spain, Portugal, and France, displacing over 300,000 residents and prompting emergency deployment from neighboring European Union allies. Emergency services continue battling difficult terrain and unpredictable wind conditions to protect critical power grids and coastal towns. Meanwhile, international diplomacy takes center stage next week in Turkey as NATO leaders gather to address defense spending targets, Arctic sovereignty corridors, and, of course, humanitarian aid distribution in ongoing regional conflict zones. When we return from this quick break, we'll go in depth to our main investigative feature, and that is the heartbreaking outcome in the search for 11-year-old Parker in Calgary, the mechanics of Canada's Amber Alert system, and why our emergency protocols must evolve. Stay with us. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, our program tonight is brought to you by Carry Movers. When it comes to moving your valuables, whether it's your home, apartment, or commercial offices, the stress should not be a part of the equation. Carry Movers Limited provides top-tier residential and commercial moving services across Western Canada. With a dedicated team of trained professionals, transparent pricing, and careful handling of your personal belongings, Carry Movers makes transitions seamless. Visit them today at www.carrymovers.com to get a free estimate or local rates if you're in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley area. But again, they do provide long-distance moves across Western and Northern Canada as well. So give them a call from Edmonton, Calgary, Lethbridge, Red Deer, and anywhere else that you may be moving from or to. Visit them at www.karymovers.com today to get your free estimate. That's karymovers.com, moving you forward with care and confidence. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get into our deep dive, and it is a very sad day across Alberta and the rest of Canada as the search for 11-year-old Parker has a sad ending. Before we get started on that story, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to share with you an emotional video that was released today by Parker's mother. And this message goes out to thank people for their continued support, for being out there to search for him in the almost 2-week search that went on. But there are special considerations with searching for someone who is nonverbal and on the spectrum, and it's a tough one because it means that you have to think outside of the box, as she says, to really understand the mindset of a child with these neurodevelopmental or neural system I hate to say failures, but yeah, just these challenges that present themselves in such a unique case. We'll afterwards take a look at the Amber Alert system, why it took 2 days for a special exception to be made to use the Amber Alert system in this case, and what we can do as a nation moving forward to try and prevent such a tragic outcome from future cases when we look at neurodivergent children and youth at risk. So we'll look at that as well. As we do, ladies and gentlemen, let's go on and take a look at this story from Parker's parents that was released today online. Again, you can find it online at the Calgary Police Service, or you can watch it again here as our program repeats. Bear with me as I get this video queued up and rolling, folks.
Hi, I'm Parker's mommy.
Hi, I'm Parker's daddy.
Everyone relates to having a missing child. But for a child from the special needs community it really hits hard. Well, I think there's been so many people from that community that have come out for this because they understand things, right? You know, other people don't, and they know the extra special challenges, and that you can't just search for him the same way that you typically would. That, you know, you need to think outside the box and be creative, and you know, try to find ways to connect with him. And people have done that. Like, it's walking around as well. Like, we've been out there searching too, and the things we've seen have been so touching. And we're not very effective searchers because we're crying all the time. But like the things we've seen, like I've seen people leaving out like hats and blankets and sensory toys, food and water. Like people even like having little kiddie pools for him to cool down. And yeah, not just missing signs, like there's special signs that Parker would understand because they're social stories, so that he knows if he sees a policeman, he can get help from them. So all of that has just been just overwhelming to see.
There's I've noticed on like social media, from people have shared it with me, and I've seen a few cases of this myself, that there's a lot of people who've been like, I've been in a similar situation. I've lost my son or daughter. They've run away, they've escaped, and they know the exact same feeling that we're going through. Like the sheer terror in your like chest. Like, you know, where is our kid? Yeah, like Parker, he's a lovable, quirky 11-year-old with severe autism. For him, the world is a really loud, confusing, chaotic place for him. He wears headphones all the time to help dampen that, to help make it, you know, more tolerable.
Parker loves animals from a distance, on his own terms. He loves music, as we've seen in the community with the police playing Disney songs. He just lights up with music. He's a very sensory kid, so we have a swing in our backyard, we have a swing inside. You would not believe the acrobatics he can do on it. We have to keep moving the TV further and further away, and ourselves as well, because he will swing right into us if we don't move. Hi! Wee!
You know, when not swinging, playing with water. That's like one of his favorite things, like playing in the kiddie pools. We've got like a little spray fountain mat Loves stepping on it and watching it splash up in his face.
Yeah. I would say he's quietly intelligent. Again, he surprises us all the time with what he's capable of and the schoolwork he's capable of. So the teachers will show us things that he's done and we say, was this really him? But no, you can't underestimate him.
It's meant the world to us. Like seeing all those people out searching, and like every time we walk by, people have got like Bluetooth speakers out and they've got like different Disney songs playing, and you're like, oh, they've got, Lion King, or oh, it's like Aladdin. And it's like we usually kind of break down crying after they go past, but like just how much people care, it's been incredible. Like they've like yeah, like it absolutely means like the world to us that so many people care, and like seeing all those people out walking, dedicating their time to like somebody else's kid, a complete stranger in most cases, like absolutely incredible.
I honestly don't think we have a word in English to properly express just how like overwhelmingly grateful and like appreciative we are of everybody coming out and coming together like this. Like, there's a reason that Calgary is always on those lists of the best cities to live in, and like this is it. We have seen all kinds of people, young, old, different cultures, different walks of life. Like everybody is out there and they're searching in the hot, hot summer weather, the hot, smoky summer weather, night and day, like in their cars, on their bikes, on foot, like in tall grass, like, close to the creeks, like over the hills, like everywhere, just everywhere. Thank you. Thank you for coming out, and like thank you doesn't seem like it's enough. We just can't believe the response and how everyone has come forward to help. And it means so much. Just again, like there's no words to properly express that. It means the world to us and more because Parker is our world.
Well, one, we really want to thank the community because it's been absolutely amazing. We've really appreciated everything Calgary and the province has done for us. We just really, really wanted to thank everybody.
This has been a tough week, not just us, everyone who's been helping and contributing in every way they can. This is tough. So please, if you or anyone you know is struggling with this situation, please go seek out the help you need so you can get support. It's so important. Self-care.
And don't just think about doing it for yourself. You're doing it for your family. Do it for everybody. And we say the same thing to our family as well. Seek help, not just for yourself, but for everybody around you. Yeah, like the other message is, like hug your loved ones, hug your family, hug your kids, kids, hug your parents, hold them tight. Because you don't know when you'll get another chance. We'd love to be able to give Parker another hug right now.
So again, that was a message from Parker's parents, and I thought that it was important to play here on the show. I know that they have received an outpouring of support, especially in the last 24 hours since Parker was found. It appears that his body was located in a culvert about 500 feet in, and it was a dangerous situation. And even the emergency crews that went in to retrieve and recover Parker's remains had some challenges due to pockets of gas and other concerns that were in that confined space. Now, again, it brings us to look at this case in a much broader context. Uh, when we look at how this potentially could change Canada's Amber Alert system moving forward. Before we get into that, though, I would like to, on behalf of myself, everyone at Jess FM and Jess TV, to send our heartfelt condolences to the family of Parker and to all of those who spent countless hours searching through day and night trying to find Parker. And to all the family and community, our hearts break for you tonight. As we said, this is a very unique case in the fact that the Amber Alert system was implemented. But again, it took a 2 day period for that exception to be allowed for the Amber Alert system to be utilized in this case. Now, approximately 2:52 p.m., Parker walked away from a daycare home in Calgary's northeast neighborhood of Thorncliffe. Parker, of course, as we know, was an 11-year-old boy living with severe autism. He was nonverbal, he's sensitive to loud environments, and known to engage in what specialists they term what's called elopement. And that's a tendency for neurodivergent children to wander towards quiet, concealed, or water adjacent spaces when they're overwhelmed. And this is a part of what makes this search so unique and unfortunately the outcome so sad. When he disappeared, Parker was wearing dark shorts as well as noise canceling headphones and no shirt or shoes. The look at this was what followed, and that was one of the most extensive ground search operations in Calgary's recent history. Hundreds of police officers, specialized search and rescue teams, drone operators, tactical canine units, and thousands upon thousands of community volunteers scoured the neighborhoods block by block. Searchers checked backyards, they checked sheds, garages, construction sites, and parklands. Officers even drove through streets broadcasting Parker's favorite Disney songs over patrol car loudspeakers, and they were hoping that that familiar music would coax him out of wherever he may be hiding. Tragically, on Wednesday, July the 29th, that was approximately 2:30 p.m. Calgary time yesterday, those hopes were shattered. Calgary Police Chief Katie McClellan confirmed that the search teams discovered Parker's deceased body inside a narrow stormwater culvert pipe running beneath Deerfoot Trail. A key break in the search occurred, uh, and that was when a neighbor actually had located, or a community member, I shouldn't necessarily say neighbor, but they discovered one of Parker's shoes that were located near a drainage entry point, and that prompted tactical teams to explore deep inside of that pipe network. This outcome is, of course, devastating. It's a loss for Parker's family, for his community, for his loved ones, and the entire country that has, of course, united to find him and been hoping upon hope for the best outcome that we did not see, unfortunately. But as we mourn this tragedy, we are duty bound to examine the systemic response, and that's specifically how emergency broadcasting alerts operated during those critical early days. And at the top of that, I want to say that we are not placing blame on anyone here. What we are saying is that we need to champion for change. And this is a look at the system, and it was brought in many years ago. And now there are options to update it and to expand the opportunities to have earlier intervention in cases such as Parker's. Now, to understand why Parker's case was ignited or has ignited this nationwide debate, we must first look at how Canada's emergency alert system, and specifically the Amber Alert Protocol, is legally structured. Across Canadian provinces, an Amber Alert is strictly defined by three mandatory and rigid criteria. Number one, the age of the missing individual must be under 18 years of age or a vulnerable adult in a specific jurisdiction. And that is not everywhere. That's just, as I said, specific jurisdictions that have that. Now, there has to be, number two, evidence of abduction. Police must have confirmed evidence or a strong belief that the child has been abducted by a third party. And then number three, there has to be a determination that the child may be in imminent danger. Law enforcement must reasonably believe that the child is in grave danger of serious bodily harm or death. And there must be sufficient descriptive information, such as a suspect description, vehicle license plates, and such, in order to assist the public. To offer an Amber Alert without the information just becomes a concern that if they're putting those out, people will be more inclined to ignore them if there's not sufficient information out there in a lot of the cases. So they have to meet those very strict criteria. Now, here lies the legal and the operational barrier. When a child wanders or elopes without a suspect or vehicle involved, standard Amber Alert protocols cannot be activated by police. Because Parker walked away on his own on Thursday, July the 16th, law enforcement agencies could not immediately issue an Amber Alert under the existing framework. The mandatory element of third party abduction was absent. And then we look at the fact that it took 2 full days until Saturday afternoon on July the 18th, 2026, for the government of Alberta to issue a special ministerial exemption. This exemption is an administrative decision that bypasses the standard abduction requirement and authorized the Calgary Police Service to broadcast an Amber Alert to mobile phones and media outlets across the region for a vulnerable missing child. Now, while police and provincial officials acted within the legal rules that are currently on the books, a 48-hour delay for an 11-year-old nonverbal child without shoes or a winter warm weather gear in an urban terrain represents a critical window lost. How are we going to fix this systemic blind spot is the big question. We need to look at this and maybe Parker's Law. Maybe that could become something and deals with high risk child alerts. Why does our public safety system require a 2-day administrative exemption process to notify the public when a highly vulnerable child is missing? For neurodivergent children, particularly those with autism spectrum disorder who experience extreme sensory overload or nonverbal communication, the threat level of an elopement scenario is just as acute as an abduction. Studies actually show that over 70% of lethal outcomes in autistic child elopement involve water hazards, storm drains, or high volume transportation systems such as highways. It's really a big concern. Now, what we can look at is the current versus the potential proposed high risk missing child alert. On the traditional Amber Alert system, it requires a proven third party abduction. On the proposed system, the trigger would apply to nonverbal, neurodivergent, medical risk elopement. I think that's a reasonable expectation that we can utilize the system for. Then the current system, of course, the data needed there is that the suspect description and the vehicle license plate need to be included. The proposal would change that to when you're dealing with a high risk child missing to include the child's photo sensory details, and high risk physical targets. So again, things such as culverts, highways, and the like. And then the process. When it comes to the current system, as I outlined already, there's a strict multi-tier police vetting process that must take place. With the new proposed system, that process would be an instant local broadcast, and that would get pushed out without provincial exemption delays. I think a very reasonable adjustment there. Now, let's take a look even further at what changes must happen right now across Canada and Alberta. The establishment of a silver alert or a vulnerable child emergency alert tier. Police forces should not have to ask the provincial ministries for an administrative exemption. A secondary alert category could be created that enables chief officers to immediately push geo-targeted broadcast alerts for non-abducted, high-risk missing individuals. There's automated geo-fenced mobile phone pushes now. That's an alert where a missing or vulnerable child, sorry, that's missing should instantly hit every mobile device within a 5 to 10 kilometer radius of the last known location within the first hour of a verified disappearance. Again, we have that technology. And then there's the updated first responder training. And that comes very importantly. As we saw, there were specialized or special exemptions made or processes in place with the Calgary Police Service that tried to adapt their procedures and their search pattern to accommodate a special situation or circumstance. And by that, I'm talking about playing Disney music over their loudspeakers as they drove around the community to search for him in hopes that that Disney music would bring him out of hiding. And then the updated standardized search procedures. And that again, it's specifically tailored to neurodivergent elopement. So a lot of police forces need to have training on this. And that is including immediate physical inspections of all nearby culverts, water channels, and confined quiet spaces. Before we continue on, folks, I just wanted to give another quick shout out to our episode sponsor, as this is such an important episode that we're bringing you tonight. We'd like to give a very special thank you once again to Carry Movers Limited. They are available at www.karymovers.com. A successful move requires planning, efficiency, and personnel you can trust. Carry Movers Limited has earned a reputation across Western Canada: professional integrity, superior packing services, and dependable transport logistics. Whether you're moving a residential possessions or community office hardware, let Carry Movers handle the heavy lifting. Available again online at www.karymovers.com. That's Carry Movers, and you can give them a shout or visit them online to schedule your upcoming move and request an instant online quote. Carry Movers Limited, your trusted partner in moving and relocations. Now, let's get back to our special report. When a community endures a tragedy like the loss of young Parker, the most natural human reaction is grief, followed quickly by frustration. We ask ourselves how a child could be lost in a major metropolis surrounded by modern technology, cell towers, and thousands of willing searchers. The truth is, our emergency broadcast structures were built in a different era. The Amber Alert system, named after Amber Hagerman, who was tragically abducted in Texas in 1996, was designed specifically to catch child abductors driving away on public highways. It did great work for that specific purpose. But public safety needs to expand. That safety has changed over time in terms of the needs. When an 11-year-old non-verbal boy slips out of a door, he isn't in a car with a license plate. He is moving quickly on foot, seeking shelter, or drawn to a quiet space like drainage tunnels or construction zones that are inactive. To wait 48 hours for a government ministry to grant an administrative exemption so that Calgary residents receive a cell phone alert is unacceptable here in 2026. Technology exists right now to push localized notifications to residents in specific postal codes within minutes. If a severe thunderstorm or a flash flood triggers an instant emergency alert on your phone, then surely the disappearance of a nonverbal 11-year-old boy in your neighborhood should trigger the same response. Legislative reform shouldn't take years, filled with committee hearings and reviews and studies. Provincial ministers and federal public safety leaders have the executive authority to amend these alert protocols today. I call on them to do just that. I'd like to go to a couple of questions that came in from our viewers here. First of all, Sarah M. from Red Deer, Alberta asks, James, is there any petition currently active in Alberta to push for Parker's Law? The answer to that, Sarah, is yes. Community advocacy groups in Calgary and Edmonton are already drafting formal petitions demanding the creation of a vulnerable missing child alert tier. Google search that. I don't have the links available right at the moment, but I'll put them in the comment section later after the show is rebroadcast or posted for on-demand consumption. I'll put that in our feed. But again, you can also Google search that as well. Viewer from Lethbridge, right here at home, Mark T. Why can't police use localized social media push ads or localized Amber alerts immediately? Again, Mark, police forces do issue standard missing person news releases immediately. However, the high volume intrusive alert, the one that overrides the silent mode on your cell phone or comes through on other devices or through traditional devices, is strictly restricted by those national broadcast regulations unless the specific amber criteria or provincial exceptions are granted. So that exact regulation is what needs updating, and that's what we've been talking about tonight. This has been a special episode, folks, and I encourage you to please do your part to lobby the government to make these important changes. And that brings us to the conclusion of tonight's special edition of Primetime Live. Our deepest condolences again go out to Parker's family, to his loved ones, and the entire community of Calgary during this extraordinarily painful time. We will continue to follow the legislative updates and advocate for meaningful change to Canada's emergency alert system so that every child, regardless of the circumstances of their disappearance, gets the urgent broadcast response that they deserve. If you are involved in any type of movement towards this goal, by all means, feel free to reach out to me. My direct email is James W. Cousineau, Cousineau, @gmail.com. Feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to have you on the program to raise further awareness about the need to expand the Amber Alert systems and to bring attention to your cause if you are working to get the legislators and politicians to make those important changes. Before we sign off tonight, a final thank you to Jessie back in the studio in Lethbridge. Again, thank you for all of your work behind the scenes. Nobody ever sees you, but you are greatly appreciated. Thank you, Jessie. And also, a thank you to our program sponsor, Carey Movers Limited. Their commitment to reliable service across Western Canada makes our independent broadcast operations possible. Visit them online at www.karymovers.com for all your residential and commercial moving needs. Thank you for watching Jess TV. Stay safe and look out for one another. And of course, have a good night. Thank you for joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen.